All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. We have a wonderful panel this afternoon to talk about some of the history of the GCSP program. And we have the people who are most involved with the origins of the GCSP. We're really looking forward to their comments and their perspectives on what has happened in the GCSP, how it's evolved, how it came to be what it is, and some of their thoughts for their future as well. For the people who were part of the session earlier with the student presenters, they actually have a very hard act to follow. I was incredibly impressed with the student success stories and all of the things that they were saying about how this program that was created for them.
This meeting is being recorded.
How this program that was created for them has really had such an impact and continues to have an impact on students, which is, of course, ultimately our goal. I was particularly struck by one of Hillary's comments, who said, as engineers, we take what we are given and we make the most of it. And I think that's actually a great way to think about what we can do with the GCSP program and think about the ways that we can all move forward. So joining me today for the panel presentation, we have Tom Katsouleas, we have Yanis Yortsos, Rick Miller, and Jenna Carpenter. And we also have Lynn Andrea Stein. Lynn, unfortunately, was not able to be with us here in real time as part of the Zoom program, but we asked her if she would be willing to record a session, a few minutes, that we're going to play in just a second and give her a chance to give her perspectives on what the GCSP program was as she was involved at the beginning. As I introduce each of the speakers, I'll read a little bit of a bio for each of them to give you a little bit more information about their own backgrounds. And as we go through each of the speakers, they're going to speak about their experiences, their perspectives, their ideas for 5 or 6 minutes. And then we're going to move on to questions from the audience. And as in the past sessions, you can ask your question through the Q&A or through the chat. So as I said, I'm going to start with Lynn. Unfortunately, she cannot be with us, but I did want to introduce her and show the video. So Lynn Andrea Stein is professor of computer and cognitive science at Olin College of Engineering. She earned her bachelor's degree in computer science from Harvard and Radcliffe Colleges and master's and doctorate degrees in computer science from Brown. She was previously a professor in the EECS department at MIT, as well as the AI laboratory and laboratory for computer science. Over the past 2.5 decades, Lynn has worked with the worldwide community to develop broader visions of computing and engineering education, running educational workshops, leading professional initiatives, and serving on advisory and visiting committees to a wide range of academic institutions and curricular programs. She is a member of Olin's founding faculty and played a key leadership role in the development of the Grand Challenge Scholars Program. Although her schedule did not allow her to join us today, we are very pleased that she took the time to make a video recording of her thoughts about the GCSP to share with us today, which I will now share with you all.
Stein, and I'm one of the members of the original steering committee for the National Academy of Engineering's Grand Challenge Scholars Program. I'm sorry I'm not able to be with you today. I do want to take a few moments to reflect on where we've come from and where we may be going with this program. I'm grateful to the National Academy, whose thoughts about what the grand challenges of this century would look like and how they might differ from last centuries were the impetus for this whole conversation. And I'm grateful too to Yanis Yortsos and Tom Katsouleas and Rick Miller, whose vision of how the grand challenges could inspire a new generation of students and scholars to think differently about problems was critical to the formation of this program. When the three of them asked Monty Reichert and Louise Yates and Martha Absher and me to implement this program, we were excited about the possibilities and prospects of the ways in which the 5 pillars of the Grand Challenge Scholars Program could inform education for a new generation of engineers. We all know how important interdisciplinary thinking, global engagement, service learning, entrepreneurial mindset, and engagement with the problems of today are for us and for our students. I'm here grateful to all of those people, and yet inspired much more by the rest of you, by the way in which we all together created this program. It was people on campuses across this country and around the world who built individual Grand Challenge Scholars programs based on those 5 pillars, and who used that inspiration to create a kind of education that works for your students in your context, and that allows your students to engage with today's problems. At the same time, it's our students, and now our many, many alumni, who really embraced these challenges. It's the students and alumni who pushed us to think creatively about how we could shape an education that would help prepare them for today's challenges. And it is you, students and alumni, who continue to inspire us to build programs like this one and to build on programs like this one as we move through this inflection point and into the future in which we all work together to solve today's grand challenges. So I'd like to thank the leadership of the National Academy of Engineering that helped us get started, and the visionary elders of our community who positioned us well. But really, I'd like to thank all of you, our community, who pulled together and created for the future a vision of the way in which we as a community can address tomorrow's grand challenges.
That was a tremendous message from, oops, sorry. I think that was a tremendous message from Lynn, and really an inspiration in thinking about what the impact has been on our students, and in the way in which our students and our alumni now can start to plan the future of what GCSP can be. All working together. I thought that was a great part of her message as well. We each have our individual strengths as institutions and as individual people, but working together, we can certainly create a tremendous opportunity for students in the future. Now I'd like to go to Yanis Yortsos, and let me introduce him and say a few words about his background, and then turn it over to him and let him say a few words. And I think he's also going to show a couple of videos as well. Yanis Yortsos is the Dean of the USC Viterbi School of Engineering. He received a BS in Chemical Engineering from the National Technical University of Athens, Greece, and MS and PhD degrees from the California Institute of Technology. As Dean of Engineering, he articulated the concept of Engineering Plus, positioning engineering as the enabling discipline of our times, tremendous message, and has been actively engaged in the effort to change the conversation about engineering. He is a member of the National Academy of Engineering, and since 2017 has served as a member of the NAE Council. He is also one of the co-founders of the Global Grand Challenge Scholars Program, and as you'll hear more about tomorrow, he created the program, the NAE COVID-19 Call for Engineering Action Program, following the onset of COVID-19 epidemic. We're likewise thrilled to have Yanis with us today. Please, Yanis.
Thank you very much, Keith, and it's a great pleasure to be here. It's so wonderful to have this meeting again together. And so I'm very happy to sort of reminisce a little bit on how the program started. I'm sure my memory will be checked by Tom and Rick. But I am sitting here on my desk here at USC, on the USC campus. And this is actually the same place where I was when I received a call from Tom back in June 2008. I remember it very vividly because he called to ask if we could start an initiative regarding the just announced Grand Challenges for Engineering from the National Academy. The Academy announced, provided a report back then, I think it was spring of 2008. And Tom, then being the Dean of Engineering at Duke University, simply jumped on it, put a phone call between me and Rick, and we decided to do something about the announcement of the Grand Challenges for Engineering. And we agreed to create the first summit on the Grand Challenges in March 2009, which happened at Duke University. The parallel with today's anniversary actually are very eerie. They were both post-election years. They were both scarred with great upheaval. Back then, the Great Recession of 2008 was commencing. And today, of course, we have the pandemic and also the economy. But as befits such times of uncertainty, this is where positive changes happen and where good leadership shines. The March 2009 event at Duke was a great success. NAE President Chuck Vest, whom we lost early in 2013, was the keynote speaker. I distinctly remember a slide he showed. The slide said, "Washington is full of gloom and doom." Then he drew two diagonal lines across the slide. He crossed it out and said, "Nonsense." But I would like to let him take it from there. And I would like to show a video of his speech. And hopefully I will be able to share my screen here. Let me see if I can do that. Okay, so I will go here. Share my screen. Is it okay? Do you see it yet?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, so let me see how I can play.
We started off yesterday with 14 grand challenges and added a 15th, which was getting here. So congratulations to all of you who made it. And I certainly want to thank Moira and Peter Lang, Duke's provost, and the three great men who really pulled this whole thing together. I can't quite call them the three Greeks, but two and a half, Tom Katsileas, Yanis Yortsos, and Rick Miller. In my view, we're here to observe and celebrate the power of great ideas. And as we go through the day and you hear from the many experts that are with us about what it's going to actually take to face these challenges and to master them, I think you're going to get really very excited. But at the end of the day, what we hope to stimulate is innovation and action. We don't want to just say, here are the challenges and go away, write a report that sits on a shelf. We hope that a new generation will come forward and actually accomplish the great tasks of meeting these challenges. We care most especially about universities and about students, because this is where it really has to begin. And it really is the students hopefully receiving the benefit of a somewhat reshaped new education who will really accomplish these great tasks. As we have to find the opportunity that lies within the difficult situation we find ourselves in, this is a great time for transformation, for reinventing, for setting off on new pathways. I believe this is the most exciting time in human history to be engaged with science and with engineering. Engineering is really about the future. So we really need to be thinking about what innovations are needed, what things are ripe for really major changes, and most important of all, how is it that engineering is going to contribute to the actual ability of humankind to survive? We're very interested in young people, thinking about the relationship between science and medicine and mathematics and engineering and making the world a better place. When we ask bright kids, why did you not go into engineering? The answer is almost always, oh, I thought I'd go into something where I could have more impact on people's lives. There is no field that has more impact on people's lives than engineering. And we think these grand challenges tell that story.
That was Chuck back then when he was part of this historic meeting in many ways, I can say. Then Tom and Tom's inspiration really was very important here because he articulated and saw the vision for a Grand Challenges Scholars Program, which was announced back in April 2009 at the Engineering Dean's Institute in Boston. At that time, there was this announcement, and it was a sort of a manifesto of what the Grand Challenges Scholars Program was going to be. See here a picture of Tom and Rick and myself a little bit in a few earlier years, looking a lot more, let's say, interesting in some way. But that's when this program started. Then we followed by a summit at USC in October of 2010, which was the second summit, and these were the second national summit. There were some other local summits that took place as well. And essentially, that summit also was the launching pad for the Grand Challenges Summits of the International Grand Challenges Summit that are taking place, started taking place from 2013 and follow up. I just wanted to also show it's just a little bit of another video from there because I happen to have it. I hope to see it here.
This is the most exciting year.
Yanis, I'm not sure that what you're intending to show is showing up. We can see still the one slide from March 2009, which is the first summit in Durham.
How can I take that existing system instead of building a new one and innovate?
If the old paradigm was defined as more, faster, bigger, more powerful, the new one will be more with less. There also seems to be a growing political sense of global awareness today of the urgency of addressing the grand challenges of global sustainability, health, and security.
This is a knowledge age. We're going to have a vibrant economy, good quality of life, provide jobs to people. Science and technology and engineering are at the core of what has to be done.
My job, and I argue all of our jobs, is to first extend the excitement of this atmosphere out beyond the confines of our sheltered meccas. But even more importantly, our job is to shift the perception of society towards valuing the engineering profession and engineers in particular.
The 15th Grand Challenge. And that has to do with our ability to educate the science and engineering workforce for the future.
When you enable women and minorities to really understand what they can do, they get excited about it.
The relevance of engineering and science now often takes on an appeal to young people. I suspect it's about committing oneself to a cause that's greater than self-interest, and it's truly inspirational.
It is very gratifying for me to see this Grand Challenges Summit turn into what could only be categorized as a national movement. And I'd say this summit is the high point in that movement so far.
Any breakthrough idea, any radical idea, the day before it's a breakthrough, it's a crazy idea. In 1961, when we went to the moon and JFK said we're going to go, we had no idea how we were going to get there. But the challenge was so bold that it attracted the right people. And the average age of the engineers who built it were in their late 20s. So next time someone who's in the mid-20s comes to you with a radical idea, listen.
As I've gone into my senior year thinking ahead of where am I going after I graduate from NAE Grand Challenges program, it's really, really become a valuable experience, something I'm very grateful for.
I've just spoken to our august leader, Yanis Giorgis. This event will not be the last, and we're going to follow up with something much grander in an international scale. So the grand challenges are going to go international in the Davos style.
I think I would stop here, and I want to simply say that following that summit, then of course we started the international part of it as well, including the first summit in London. And then these summits continue with the summit in China, then the Washington, D.C., and then last year back in London again. I have a little bit of a slide here that summarizes all of them and some of the pictures that came out as a result of this from 2017 to 2016, a meeting with the President of the United States when there was a commitment to graduate a number of Grand Challenges scholars, and here we are today. So Keith, I will stop here, and that will be the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Giannis. I think we had a couple of little challenges with the video in
Oh,
the
I'm sorry.
presentation, but that's okay. I think we heard the message loud and clear, and we
Good.
certainly heard Chuck's voice talking about the importance of the program and how it can affect and how we need to address the grand challenges of the future. I'd like to now turn to Tom Katsouleas. Tom Katsouleas has been president of the University of Connecticut since August of 2019. Prior to UConn, he was the executive vice president and provost at the University of Virginia, after serving for 7 years as the dean of the Pratt School of Engineering at Duke University. Tom earned his bachelor's degree from UCLA after transferring there from Santa Monica Community College, and stayed at UCLA to pursue and receive his PhD in physics. He was a researcher and faculty member at UCLA for 7 years before joining the University of Southern California faculty. As was pointed out, while at Duke, he was one of the founders of the Grand Challenge Scholars Program, and we're incredibly excited to have him joining us here today.
Thank you, Keith. It's a pleasure to join all of you this afternoon. It's so gratifying to me personally to see the growth and vitality that all of you in the audience are bringing to the Grand Challenge Scholars Program. You know, Giannis and Rick and I have been referred to as the three amigos, and certainly our friendship has been a key aspect of our thinking and our success of the program with working on the program. And if we're the three amigos, then I would say the Grand Challenge Scholars Program is our bebe. And now at age 11, it's El Nino La Nina. So thank you for taking good care of our Nina. I'm happy to share a few anecdotes from the birth of the Grand Challenges program. Giannis did a terrific job of summarizing. I think just a couple of highlights that I would add. I think the first lesson from the beginning of this idea is that, and this is something that Rick and Giannis have really helped me with, is where others saw a list, they saw a call to action, right? So when the Grand Challenges came out in 2007 and Chuck Vest presented a slideshow on it, many people saw it as a list, and it really, even Chuck was disappointed that it didn't get a bigger response and impact. And it was really the conversation that Giannis mentioned in July of 2008 that we all asked ourselves, is this a list or a call to action, and how can we catalyze something? And at the end of that conversation and the end of that summit, we began to ask ourselves an additional question, and that was, if this is really where engineering is going in the 21st century, it's about addressing grand challenges, about making people's lives better. Are we giving the kind of education that our students need in order to be the generation that addresses these grand challenges? And the answer to that question for us was not quite. We appreciated the engineering fundamentals, and that's really within about 30 minutes, the concept of these other 5 pillars came up as we thought of how could we optimally prepare the next generation of students. But we also left a lot of flexibility, realizing that each university had its own strengths to build on, and we left that as a broad concept, and it took off from there. I think the other boost that came to the program, I think, was in that first year, both at the summit and at the dean's meeting that Giannis referred to, invited other schools to join us. About a dozen schools, as I recall, first joined in and expressed an interest in creating a similar program. And it was sometime in that first year that we got a force of nature that gave us a big boost, and that was Jenna Carpenter. And when she took over as head of the steering committee and brought her passion to it and dedication, it took off. And really, it was the dedication of all the participating schools. You may remember this book, The Starfish and the Spider by Ori Braffman and Rod Beckstrom. This is really the story of the starfish. I mean, this is a group of individual universities that had a shared passion and worked in a federated way, but independently and together. So that was one lesson. The other boost that Giannis touched on, but I think is worth repeating, is the boost we got from the White House. We had a president in Obama who really appreciated the importance of engineering and engineering education to the economy and to the prosperity and spirit and well-being of the nation, and wanted more students to go into engineering. He was very plain about that. He talked about it in the Tonight Show. And he offered to us that if we could get 50 schools interested in the Grand Challenge Scholars Program, he would host us at the White House. And he did. And we actually got about 100 schools and deans to respond and participate in that workshop, which further sharpened the 5 pillars. And I just share with you, this conversation with Obama in that White House clutch that we had, which really gave me the sense that he really understood what this was all about. He said to me, and I was very starstruck, by the way. I had all these Duke basketball jokes ready to impress him with, and I forgot everything. He said, Tom, he said, probably when you took thermodynamics, you were just interested in the subject because you thought it was interesting. He said, but students these days need to know what it's good for. And they need more than that. They need to know, how they can use it to improve the world. And right there, it showed me that he knew everything there was to know about the Grand Challenge Scholars Program and why this was the important framing of the program. And I think that's what's enduring today, is that we have a generation of students that really cares about changing the world, about addressing grand challenges, about, as Chuck Vest said in that recording that Yannis played so long ago, that this is a generation, especially women and minorities, that care deeply about human lives and improving the human condition. And the grand challenges are that framing that resonates and still resonates with that generation of students. And of course, it's also the imprimatur of the National Academy, which still resonates with deans across the country. So those are 2 important drivers, I think, and lessons in going from what started as a list, became a call to action, and ended as a movement.
Thank you, Tom. That was great. Particularly enjoyed the story that you told about interacting with Obama. He clearly got what the GCSP is all about. And
Sure did.
I would say even more broadly, he clearly understood what today's students are looking for. And I think that we continue to see that. And this is really a program for our times and for our times into the future. I think this generation of students really does want to make a difference, and they see the opportunity to do that through engineering and through GCSP. So thanks for telling us that story. Rick Miller is the next person I'd like to introduce. Rick Miller was the founding president and first employee of the Franklin W. Olin College of Engineering, where he served as president until this past June. Prior to joining Olin, he served as Dean of Engineering at the University of Iowa and Associate Dean of Engineering at USC. He earned his BS from the University of California at Davis and his MS from MIT and PhD from the California Institute of Technology. In 2017, he received the Brock International Prize in Education for his contributions to the reinvention of engineering education in the 21st century. He is a member of both the NAE and the National Academy of Inventors. In 2017, with support from the Curran Family Foundation, he initiated the Coalition for Life Transformative Education, which I know is one of the primary focuses of his current efforts. He is also, as has been pointed out, one of the co-founders of the Grand Challenge Scholars Program, and we are excited and thrilled to have him joining us today. Rick.
Thanks, Keith. I remember that phone call from Tom very well, just as Yannis does. And one of the things that resonated almost immediately with me is it is an opportunity to correct what I think is a historic straitjacket that we've lived in engineering. I guess the easiest way to explain this is, what does it mean to be an engineer? And I'm here because my high school math teacher told me I was good at math. So obviously I must be a person who should become an engineer. It took me a long time to figure out what an engineer was. I think from the experimentation we've done at Olin for 20 years, one of the things that I've learned is that an engineer is a person who envisions what has never been and then does whatever it takes to make a better world. The math is the whatever it takes part. It doesn't begin with math, it begins with vision. That has never been more true than it is for the young people that we have today. I also remember that meeting in 2009, which Tom so clearly articulated, it would be different. The whole purpose of this was to change the conversation in engineering, change it in multiple ways. For example, who is going to be at this meeting? We talked a lot about that. The audience should be mostly students. And I think that first meeting had about 1,100 people there, and about half of them were students. And our judgment that students would bring the most important questions was resonated in spades when we got there. Almost all of the most memorable and the most difficult questions came from students. This is really in stark contrast to the way professional societies usually populate meetings, where there are people with PhDs. And the way they are invited to come is that they submit an abstract, and some other PhDs look at the abstract, and they decide, well, we'll have, a broad distribution of topics, and people will come and present them, and it'll be kind of like a journal, technical journal that's presented to you live. It's really hard to get students interested in that kind of a meeting. So we also didn't ask for abstracts. There was a set of keynote invitations that went to people like Chuck Vest. A number of these people were on the TED stage that had come to talk to us before. It completely changed the way we thought about having meetings about what engineering is. This also later in working at Olin really began to realize what's going on here. A good education changes what you know, but a great education changes who you are. And if you think back to those few minutes ago, those case studies and those personal stories of what the Grand Challenges meant to the students that have been through it recently, it's pretty clear that their life will never be the same. This is a mechanism for changing who you are. And changing who you are is a big deal in higher education today. When you can change the identity, the agency, and the purpose of someone through, for example, the experiences, the Grand Challenges, we know from data, for example, from the Gallup Well-Being Index with Purdue, that you increase their well-being in midlife. You can really change the trajectory of a person's life by this kind of an experience. So these are not about 14 problems that were identified back in 2008. Those are a list, as Thomas said. They're also like individual trees that together make a forest. And we need to inspire young people to think about the forest, that they see, to dedicate their lives to something that will change the world in a better way. So I am thrilled with what the potential is for the future. I'm really convinced that we've never been at a point where we could make more happen together. The growth of this movement is now at a tipping point. I think it doesn't fit in any easy definition, and it's our responsibility to take the opportunities that we now have to build on these outside of our straitjacket and to think broadly about where we can go. So I'm excited for where we're at.
Thank you, Rick. Really appreciate those remarks. And I think to build on what you were saying and what Giannis had said and what Thomas had said, really are changing the conversation. I think the Grand Challenge Scholars Program has changed the way we talk about engineering and the way we think about engineering and the way we talk about ourselves and the way that we think about the opportunities for our students. I really think that our students are recognizing that engineering is creating or allowing them to become superheroes and rock stars who can really make a difference in the world. I'd like to now turn to Jenna Carpenter so she can provide her remarks, and then we'll open it up for questions. So Jenna Carpenter is the founding dean of engineering at Campbell University, where she is leading a faculty team in the development of an innovative, hands-on, project-based engineering curriculum. Prior to becoming dean at Campbell, she was on the faculty of the College of Engineering and Science at Louisiana Tech University. She is a national expert on innovative STEM education and supporting the success of women in STEM fields. In 2015, Dreambox Learning named her as one of 10, quote, women in STEM who rock, the only academic in a field of politicians, actresses, and CEOs. She is also a fellow of the American Society of Engineering Education. Jenna served for 7 years as the chair of the steering committee for the Grand Challenge Scholars Program, and she currently chairs the pilot program committee for the Gulf Scholars Program for the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. Jenna, thank you so much for making the time to be with us here. We're looking forward to hearing your comments.
Sure, thanks. I'll probably do some dittos of what Giannis, Tom, and Rick have said. Just thinking back, I really have had the honor of spending my entire academic career at institutions that were very innovative. So we have never taken a traditional approach to engineering, very hands-on project-based, very application-based. So my dean at the time when I was at Louisiana Tech went to that Engineering Deans Institute session and heard about the Grand Challenge Scholarship Program. And he came back and said, I think we ought to try to start one of these. So we actually went to Olin, Rick, to a meeting you all had about the Grand Challenge Scholarship Program. I remember Lynn was there. And when we got home, we thought, this fits us to a T. It really gives us a great way to provide some extra opportunities. So we did create a program, and at Louisiana Tech, we were the 5th program in the U.S. after the initial 3 in Arizona State. And not long after that, joined the steering committee and had the pleasure of serving as the chair for that committee for a number of years. And in the meantime, moved to Campbell University, started a Grand Challenge Scholars Program here, and had our first 2 graduates last year. I would say that, looking back, it really has been exciting to see the growth of the program, not only institutions in the U.S., but institutions abroad. Interest from non-engineering programs. I would say many of the institutions, many of your institutions have Grand Challenge Scholars programs that involve programs outside of engineering, even outside of STEM. And the steering committee's always had a great attitude. Just because nobody's done this before doesn't mean you can't. So propose an idea, and we'll look at that. We've seen many, many really cool ideas along the way. Of course, a lot of international interest. All of the meetings and the summits, it's been my pleasure at Campbell to bring 2 groups of students to some of those national meetings. And the way that, they come back fired up from those meetings, there's nothing I could do here that would excite them nearly as much. I guess there's really 3 points I'd like to kind of make in closing. One is why I've been passionate, because the program has relied on a tremendous amount of volunteer effort. In fact, many of the people you saw earlier today have put many, many, many hours in. And so sometimes people say, why would you devote so much time and effort to something that's a volunteer? And it's because I'm really passionate about the program itself, the goals of the program, what it's trying to do. It's really challenging to take your curriculum, throw it out the door and start from scratch, right? I mean, it's hard to do. I've been able to build a program from scratch at a new school, but that's something that's hard to do with an existing program. So it's a way to come in and make some change without trying to do that, which takes forever. And I think really the genius of the program that Tom, Rick, and Giannis developed was the structure. So it provides scaffolding. And the scaffolding helps ensure quality. It helps ensure alignment with the goals of the program, but it provides enough flexibility that you can take and create a program. It's adaptable to your local context. So you get to create a program that works for you, your institutions, your students, and also let you take advantage of opportunities that are already there. Because a lot of times, some of these things you're already doing helps you kind of create an opportunity to knit those together. Certainly, to support the National Academy, both Presidents Chuck Vest and Dan Moat, that I know we're going to hear from later, have been absolutely crucial. As the point's already been made, it really lent a lot of credibility to the program, generated a lot of interest, and really has helped us create a fantastic network of collaborators. And I'll just echo, the students are always so motivated. I come away as excited from the students and alums as I do anything. You heard from Amara earlier today. She was one of my mentees at Louisiana Tech. Students do absolutely phenomenal things. I will say at Louisiana Tech University, while I was there, we had several Grand Challenge Scholars Program students apply for NSF graduate fellowships. They're very competitive, very hard to get. 100% of Louisiana Tech's Grand Challenge Scholars Program students who applied for NSF grad fellowships got them. It's a stunning figure, right? Absolutely stunning. But it's because they'd done some different things. They had a story to tell. They hadn't done a bunch of unrelated things. They really had a goal and a story to tell. And as you heard from the students today, I would say that they're probably fairly typical. There's a lot of Grand Challenge Scholars Programs graduates who have similar stories to the panel we heard from today, which is, I know why Katie wanted to share that one. It's always a lot of fun to see what they're doing. They really take the program and do things that we could never imagine. And because a lot of my time and effort's been focused on diversity in STEM and trying to encourage women and underrepresented students, the Grand Challenge Scholars Program, I once did an analysis of our alums in the Grand Challenge Scholars Program, and we had a huge percentage of women. I want to say it was something like 40 to 60% of our alums in the Grand Challenge Scholars Program were women. Many, many times what we get in engineering in general. And, the program itself, the Grand Challenges themselves, those themes really do attract a much more diverse cohort of student than we do in engineering in general, which I think is why we really ought to be using these things to recruit students to engineering. Helps them see a broad array of opportunities, which again helps encourage and motivate a much broader spectrum of student, and helps them see one of the things I've always said, the grand challenges, you could stop somebody on the street corner and talk to them about the grand challenges, and they get why they matter, right? How they make the world a better place, how they make a difference. They're not super technical. There's something everybody understands. And so it helps our students see how they can take their engineering degree and make the world a better place. And just to echo Rick, I am really excited about this next chapter in the Grand Challenge Scholars Program.
Thank you, Jenna. Yeah, I really like what you were saying about it. It's created a story for students to tell, really a narrative. I think maybe in the past we thought of, as was pointed out, the grand challenges as a list, or we thought of maybe engineering as a list of things to do, some courses that you had to apply math and science to, and at the end you got a degree. But students are clearly taking those subjects, but then combining them with the need to, and the desire clearly in this generation of making a difference in the world and creating stories for themselves that they're really good at telling, as we saw earlier. So at this point, I'd like to open it up to questions from the audience. You can post them in the chat, or you can post them in the Q&A. Love to hear from you all. While people are thinking, I'm going to ask a question, and you kind of triggered this one, Tom. You were talking about the fact that you birthed the baby, and I wonder what you think about how your baby has grown up over the years. Was it really what you expected? I mean, now that it's 11 or 12 years old, is it what you expected? Is it going into its rambunctious teenage years? How did you envision it then? And how do you feel about the way it's grown over the years?
Thanks for asking, Keith. As a parent, I guess I am very proud of the bebe. And I think when we started, we had this notion that this was going to be a challenging program, if you'll pardon the expression, for the students. And we didn't imagine that it would reach every student, but that we would incent students to stretch themselves with these 5 co-curriculars and to reflect on how they fit together to empower them to change the world. And so we were imagining that we would get up to 50 schools and that they might produce 20 graduates a year. And so we were kind of hoping to get to that level of adoption across the country. And we were, Yanis and I, we have that Greek connection. So we were thinking about the 300 from ancient Sparta and the difference that 300, especially prepared and motivated and trained individuals made to the course of civilization, and wondered if we couldn't have that same sort of impact with 1,000, especially prepared and motivated engineers, what a difference that could make for this country. And I think, probably the best indicator that vision has been achieved is in this last COVID call to action by the NAE. It was really stimulated by graduates of the program. I mean, several, but I know Andrew Meng and Rachel Lau had something to do with it. But it would not have happened but for them. So in some sense, to me, that's the sign of success. That it is a few individuals who, by virtue of this experience, are making a difference in the world.
Thank you, Tom. We're now getting a few questions in the chat and in the Q&A. I'm going to start with one from the chat because I know this has been talked about a fair amount recently, and it's been talked about in prior GCSP annual meetings because I think there's a growing awareness in industry for what GCSP scholars can really do. So the question is, could you say more about how industry and other non-academic partners were involved in the development of GCSP? For anyone?
I can take a little bit of this. The industry has embraced in many ways the outcome of this, mostly through the Grand Challenges summits, the International Grand Challenges Summits, where many of the supporters from industry, let's say Northrop and Lockheed Martin and other companies have supported the creation of these meetings, as well as most of the competitions, the student competitions that actually are part of these meetings as well. When you look overall, and I think these are some of the other questions that you see here, I think the impact of the program has been much bigger than one could measure, in the sense that it is working very much in the direction of changing the conversation about engineering. The fact that people understand that engineering is not, just like Rick mentioned, simply that we are in these silos over which we move forward with only the technical competence as being part of what we do, but many other things that come along with this. I think that's actually the most fundamental impact that we had as a program. And so industry has appreciated, I think is appreciating the program. There's more that needs to be done. And I think we getting support from the industry and more engagement and involvement would require, probably will be an objective of how we move forward of the program, and what is the next incarnation of the program, or how it moves into the, let's say, a 2.0 version, if you wish.
Yeah, I'd comment on the flip side of that question. Instead of what industry brings to the program, there's an aspect of what the program can bring back to industry. And what we've seen is companies that have taken to heart this reframing of what their business is about and what their mission statement is about, and reframe their mission statement in terms of making the world more secure, more healthful, more joyful, whatever it is that they're doing to bring value to human lives. Those companies are becoming increasingly more attractive to graduates across the board. And they're able to attract the talent and the diverse workforce that they're seeking if they reframe themselves in terms of the grand challenges that they're addressing through their companies.
Anything to add to that, Rick or Jenna?
I'll add only a little, that I think the participation from industry made it possible for us to have the summits. Let's remember the funding that enabled us to have the first national summit, the second national summit, all of the international summits has been the result of the philanthropy that came from industry. So a number of corporate leaders see immediately the value of having something like this. But one of the things I think is still yet to be done is to raise the awareness among corporate leaders all across the country of what the program is capable of producing. And as Tom said, some companies that have a natural compass direction of doing something good for the world and see that in the boardroom and see that in their mission statement automatically attract kids that we produce. And not every company is at that spot yet. It's also not geographically well recognized. I think we could do a lot more on the West Coast than we've done so far. So our best ambassadors, having spent 20 years trying to create something new and then get the world to look at it, it turns out that it's not a good idea to locate 15 miles from MIT with a few people on the banks of a river and say, walk up to the front door of MIT and say, excuse me, you guys need to be doing things in a different way. That doesn't work. So you need to be much more creative, and you need to work broader than what we're doing now. Embracing fields outside of engineering. If we define engineering more broadly, bring in people who literally envision what has never been and do whatever it takes to make a better world. That actually aligns much better with the mission statement in most companies as well.
And if I may add one more thing here, I think one of the, not obstacles, but challenges that we had in the past is the fact that people interpret these 14 grand challenges very literally. They think that, if you work on solar energy, yes, come in. If you work on wind energy, no, you're not going to be part of that kind of thing. So I think we have been a little bit too dogmatic about the adherence to the grand challenges of the National Academy and not taking the spirit, sticking with the letter. And that has sometimes alienated some faculty who basically says, well, I'm not working in this area, therefore, why should I be interested in this particular thing? I think we have missed a little bit the opportunity to broaden this. And I think that's something that we have to, do a little bit more work and change it. And I think the industry will then respond accordingly in some way as well.
I'll just add that we've continually encouraged programs to interpret those broadly, right? We say we interpret the grand challenges broadly, and that's why we've kind of begun to use more of those theme areas as well, because as Jonas said, that's really what we're after. So.
Yeah, great. I think that word broadening, I think that's something to keep in mind for today and for tomorrow as we think about the future and some of the sessions that we have planned for tomorrow, because there is an opportunity to think more broadly and to make sure that people don't get locked on to those 14 challenges as really a limiting way that we can envision the program. I'm going to ask one more question that looks back, and then I'm going to start changing the conversation a little bit. That the session is entitled Looking Back, but obviously a big part of the benefit of looking back is taking those lessons learned from the past and then thinking about the future. So I'm going to move in that direction in just a couple minutes, but I want to ask one question that appeared in the chat, or excuse me, in the Q&A. So do you have any regrets or other things you wished had gone differently? So that's a tough thing when you're starting a new program to know what even your expectations are. And the program has obviously done very, very well. But are there certain things that if you had the chance to change or think about differently, you might have done differently? Do you have any regrets about how things went or how they started?
I will say that one of the things our steering committee did early on, we wrote a couple of grant proposals to the National Science Foundation, which really could have given us a real shot in the arm. Unfortunately, those didn't make it very far. I thought that they were fantastic. Of course, I helped write them. I guess that's probably wouldn't have written something, but they really were. We had some really innovative ideas, and we did have some. AMD, for example, sponsored an early meeting we had for the Grand Challenge Scholarship, where we had some industry that were interested in a variety of institutions and things. And so I wish, if I could have had a magic wand, I think if we'd have gotten one of those, it would have helped us get off the ground maybe a little faster and could provide us some great support. But we just did it anyway,
One of the places that we have not been as successful as we would have been, and I think maybe that's a regret in some way, was that we didn't try hard enough, perhaps, to bring into the program students from other disciplines. Let's say, for example, let's say in my school here at USC, there's many disciplines that would benefit tremendously from this program. And that's something that is probably something that we have to start changing and creating a program that is much more university-wide than simply being part of simply the engineering school. I think that's something that we should be doing more and more.
Yeah, I think we tried similar. Something we tried to tap into K-12. We started some K-12 programs. NC State started something. Duke started something, and those went for a few years. But at least in the Duke case, it was funded by Boeing. When the funding ended, the program kind of ended. And so I think there's still some untapped opportunity there to make that same powerful framing to attract students at a younger age into the field of engineering.
I'd like to build just a second on the broadening theme. As was mentioned, we have a powerful program for grand challenges in engineering, but there are many parallel visions of the grand challenges as well, including the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And I think we could do a better job of articulating a partnership between the UN Sustainable Development Goals and what the NAE's original vision for Grand Challenge Scholars in Engineering is about. If you really want to create a movement, I think we need a big tent. And I still think of engineering now, after experimenting for a long time, is not about applying mathematics to solve technical problems in engineering science problem sets. It's about vision. It's about envisioning what has never been and doing whatever it takes to make it happen. And engineering students are not the only ones that have vision. And if you put them on multidisciplinary teams to think about this, the engineers bring the technical reality to the table, but they also need partners who think about the social sciences, who think about the even the religious dimensions to implementing technology in a dimension of the world which is dominated by particular views. All of this is necessary.
Great. Anything to add, Jenna, that you would like to put in?
I would say, we've had programs that, we've even had Grand Challenge Scholars programs not set in a College of Engineering. So, there's certainly examples that we've encouraged it, but we haven't had as much buy-in from, non-engineering, non-STEM disciplines, but totally agree. Yeah, totally agree.
Let me give a backward plug to Yanis Yortsos here. My only regret is that I didn't use the Grand Challenge Scholars program, the Grand Challenges, more in our recruitment materials at Duke when I was dean, the way Yanis did at USC. And Yanis is now, I think it's probably the first institution in the country to be at 50-50 in terms of gender balance in engineering. So congratulations, kudos to you, Yanis. But I think the way that you've used the Grand Challenges as an attractor is really powerful. And I wish I'd done more.
That's interesting. As I'm looking at a number of questions, and I think there's a common theme, and really it's a common theme for this meeting. As we heard earlier, the program is in a state of transition. So, and that's a great opportunity for us. And you are all involved in creating this program initially, and we are in some sense rebirthing the program at this point moving forward. So there's a number of questions that come around the topic of, what is the greatest challenge that you foresee for the GCSP and continuing to grow? How can we continue to promote the GCSP program to new universities in the US and abroad? What are the top 3 goals for the GCSP at the moment, and how is the GCSP planning on meeting them? So these are all around the themes of looking to the future, and I'm really pleased to see those questions, because I think we all want, as we always do, want to look towards the future and ways to make the program better, way to reach more students, way to reach more universities. Given your experience starting this program, how do we put all your experience together with all the new energy that I'm sure is out there in the participants in this meeting and out at all the various campuses? How do we put that all together to move into the future and make GCSP even better? Big question, obviously.
I was a little intentional with foreshadowing my answer to this question in my remarks when I brought up the starfish and the spider. Essentially, we're moving back to the starfish model, and I think it's really robust and it works really well. And it needs dedicated people at the grassroots who continue to support it. It needs successors to each of us and successors to Jenna. I mean, it needs the Katie Evans and the Amy Trowbridges to take up the charge. And I'm not so worried about the program because the challenges are still there. In fact, they're evolving. I mean, COVID was a grand challenge, and global infectious disease, it kind of fits in. And so the challenges need solving, and our students, unless they change dramatically in the next foreseeable future, which I don't think they're going to, are still going to be drawn to wanting to be empowered to help the world be better. So those things are not going away. The drivers are not going away. We just need to give them the tools to empower them. And I think it's a combination of the starfish and, as Jenna said, this continuing the flexibility of allowing each university to shape their program within the structure in a way that makes the most sense for their university and leverages their strengths. And, I remember when we started, Purdue's, was big in service learning. They had the big program there, and it was a way of basically leveraging and expanding that. And other schools had great strengths, Colorado School of Mines around sort of human rights engineering and leveraging that. And so it's about hooking in each university hooking into its particular strengths, but tying to this theme that is still has the imprimatur of the National Academy of Engineering. And one of the things I learned, and as they did not know when I started, is the NAE is very much the thought leader for engineering across the world. And I did not know that many other countries look to the NAE and not their own necessarily National Academy of Engineering in their country for thought leadership. And so those two things aren't going away. And I think as long as there's still the core commitment from dedicated leaders like the ones that are on this call, I think that's the only ingredient that still needs to be refreshed. And and they need to bring their own ideas to the program to make it even better.
There's been a lot of great ideas, doing a better job of engaging alumni, how do we get programs mentored? And so some of it is just finding the bandwidth, right? I do worry with COVID-19 and things like that, it is consuming a lot of bandwidth. But again, we've got a lot of fantastic people who have been and who are continuing to lead. So I think finding people who are willing to step up and take all the great ideas that the network has generated and help those kind of move on to fruition. I think that's one challenge, but it really is an opportunity out there. And it's a great time to kind of think about that as we kind of shift gears a little bit. And so, just looking forward to it. We've got so many alumni now. I know that Giannis is going to talk about a great initiative, but again, trying to harness that as well.
We're at a moment now of transition, which provides great opportunities to rethink structure, rethink function, and rethink goals. We could now, if we take a deep breath, envision an organizational structure now that's quite inclusive, that reaches out to students and to members of lots of different institutions around the country, possibly looks across the spectrum at other movements that have happened in higher education, borrows from the lessons learned there about what worked and what didn't work, and develop inclusiveness of corporations and of foundations as well. I note, for example, the role of the Kern Foundation in bringing forward this transition. The Kern Foundation has played an enormous catalytic role in sponsoring the advance of entrepreneurial mindset as we go forward. I can remember some of the same challenges. It's like the only advantage I can think of being old, is when I brought the idea of entrepreneurial mindset to Iowa in 1992. And we pushed hard to try to create an entrepreneurial technology certificate for engineers. It's kind of a minor. And all of, some of the best faculty said, wait a minute, this doesn't even include calculus. How could this possibly be good for engineers? I mean, it's eroding the technical content, and this is just a slippery slope, and everything is going to go downhill from there. And then I noted that ASEE eventually embraced the idea of entrepreneurial dimension to engineering. It's like one of the fastest growing sections within ASEE, but it took 20 years. It didn't happen overnight. I think we have to think more broadly, and we have to reach out and seize the moment. This is an opportunity for us to do really cool things.
I want to add one more thing as well to this conversation here. And, one of the things that we see very prevalent in our society today is the absence of trust. People don't trust anymore. And the question then is, how do you make sure that you create people that are trustworthy in some sense? I think the Grand Challenges Scholars Program is fundamentally the right place for this, because it does not only emphasize competence, through the one of the mindsets, technical competence, but also emphasizes, in some sense, development of character in some way. The fact that you need to know about society and care about it. The fact that you need to understand cultures and care about them, and on how you approach solutions. So I think if we were to think that actually this is a program that emphasizes both character and competence, and that these two elements together create trust. And I think that in some sense is another way to look at the program. And I'm very optimistic that we can create a transformative mindsets in that way that can bring back some trustworthiness, particularly when technology is growing exponentially fast. And the impact of technology will bring these trust issues again and again and again through ethics, through decision-making, through many of these other things. So I think this is an important part that we will see in the future.
Yeah, that's a great comment, Giannis. Thank you. And there's a few other questions in the Q&A that I want to get back to, but I want to continue this one just a little bit more, because this clearly continues to be a great vision. There continues to be great energy and enthusiasm at all levels. People who have been involved in the program for many years, alumni, incoming students. But I'm kind of coming back to that broadening again, and I'm going back to something that you said, Rick, and thinking about, and Giannis and Tom and Jenna as well, this idea that there's these 14 grand challenges, there's these 4 overarching themes, there's the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and there's the desire to really engage not just engineers, but a huge range of other students and people, educators, administrators, others, in the ideas, in the vision of what GCSP can be about. So are there suggestions that you could make for that part of the structure moving forward? Should we throw away 14, or never throw them away? Should it just be the 4 themes? Should it be directly connected to the UN SDGs? Should it be really clear that you don't need to be an engineer to be part of this? What are your thoughts on how to structure these kind of overarching principles on which the GCSP is based? Another big question, sorry.
I might use, again, what I think was one of the key reasons the program has been successful, and is the fact that it provides that scaffolding with the ability to build something at the local level that makes sense. So it could be about messaging, that, making sure it's clear that you don't just have to have engineering students, you can have other students involved, that you need to think about the challenges broadly and not, as Giannis was saying, very, very strictly. We've kind of done that, so maybe that's not come across well, but how can we communicate those things? But again, I like the idea of providing scaffolding, and so maybe those are built in as options, but the scaffolding that maintains the quality, that points people toward the goals, and it gives you lots of flexibility at the local level to create something that works. So, that would be my guidance, I guess.
There is we often talk about wicked problems. And so I had a conversation with my former provost here who wanted to invest in wicked problems. And I said to him that the only time we have wicked problems is when people are involved. If you remove people out of it, the problems are not wicked, they're complex or complicated or difficult, but they're not wicked. And so it seems to me that many of the problems that we're facing in society come into this category, and therefore human-centric engineering, human-centric challenges will become more and more important. And I think that we can identify a number of them. And, many of the disciplines out there have these challenges. And if I believe, which I do, that engineering is the empowering discipline of our times, we can actually use engineering in that way to actually try to resolve many of these problems. So I think that will be more and more what we will see in the future.
I see this programming having an influence on the rest of higher education. And of course, the 3 amigos we're working actively on this, and as we have broader rules, and particularly at my university where I have a broader role than just engineering. And so Rick and I have been arguing about where does the engineering line end. As we move towards what we're calling life transformative education in other fields, it really is using the Grand Challenge Scholars Program as a model and trying to translate that model to other fields. The problem is the engineering Grand Challenges and the NAE Prima Tour don't mean much in the other fields, but the pedagogy, the approach means a lot. So an example at my university is that, I was sharing with Rick is, we had students in a course on activism, history and mechanisms of successful activism. And as a final project, they had to pick and apply it to something in the real world. And they chose as a group to apply it to bringing principles of activism to bear on addressing the opioid addiction problem in one of the surrounding communities near our university in partnership with the local community. And so it's a wicked problem. The question is it engineering at all? Rick said, it sounds like engineering to me. I mean, definitely the engineering approach, the problem solving, the idea of connecting your curriculum to an authentic problem with an emotionally supportive mentor is what is life transforming and empowering for students in all fields. It's just, it may not go by the name Grand Challenge Scholars outside of engineering. I actually think this this program is going to be held up as a model for two reasons. It's a model for what it's doing to help with human development, our student development, and a model for how something becomes a national movement in higher education. I think it's a model for both, but I'm not sure the name will carry over into the broader audience, but it is having an impact in that broader audience.
Let me add on to what Tom just said and propose something very practical. If we're willing to take off our engineering hat for just a minute, I know that the NAE might have a great allegiance to making sure you always have the engineering on your forehead. That makes good sense for what they do. But if you want to create a big tent, you need to be able to not lead with your engineering undergraduate degree. So I actually think of engineering as an undergraduate degree, sort of like your hometown. It's where you grew up. You know where Main Street is, you know where the post office is. But if you're still living in your hometown 30 years later, you probably haven't grown very far. So let's just take it for granted that everybody has a hometown and ours is really cool, but let's don't rub that in everybody's face. What if you did this? Just an idea. Everybody who's an engineering dean listening could do this. You could say one of the greatest concerns that America has at this crossroads today is restoring the American dream. We're worried about the economy. We're worried about immigration. We're worried about the future of our country. The American dream is really fragile and it's not what it used to be. So pick up the phone, call the dean of the business school, call the dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, and challenge them to teach a seminar with you, a voluntary seminar that has students from all three areas, and bring in a series of guest speakers to talk about the future of the American dream. Put together student teams and across your campus to write a white paper about what it's going to take to address this. Yes, it's a wicked problem, but it's the problem of the next generation. Don't sell short their ability to come forward with wisdom and with open-palmed ways of cooperating and working together. The cement hasn't hardened around their ankles yet. They're still able to think broadly outside of the discipline. So that kind of experimentation, I mean, maybe this won't work, I don't know, but I have a hunch this kind of thinking could move us forward in directions that really broaden our tent immediately.
Thank you. Thank you all. Great comments as we think about the future and the rest of this meeting today and tomorrow. I'd like to go back to some of the questions in the Q&A. I really want to make sure that we have a chance for everyone's question to be addressed. So one question that's here is, I think from a student, how can our participation in this program give us an advantage to getting involved with research and internships related to solving the grand challenges?
I will just say that, you know, the experiences that you get with the Grand Challenge Scholars Program, a lot of those tend to be unusual. You know, they're not things that every student is gonna engage in. So, you know, if you've picked your challenge or your theme area, you know what you're passionate about, and you begin to get those experiences, when you apply, you're going to be uniquely qualified, more so than you know, the average person they're getting. So those are going to help you stand out. And as you heard from the student panel earlier today, you know, faculty mentors, other students in the program can share ideas, unique things that they've been able to do, things that students probably wouldn't have sought out otherwise because they weren't part of the standard, you know, process that students go through. So it helps students connect with and see unique opportunities out there. And again, the more those you engage in, well, the better prepared you are to do those sorts of things.
We see it a lot in undergraduate research. Most of the Grand Challenge scholars, in order to get sort of one of the competencies, the technical competence, are involved in undergraduate research. And that actually, not only qualifies them, but makes them ideal actually for internships or other things, as if they want to go into the industry, for instance. It does depend a lot on having good mentoring faculty for this. And so that's why it's important that the program has the support of the faculty in your institution. Certainly, not necessarily that everyone should be supportive, but certainly you have to have a core fraction of faculty who care about the program and they're interested in supporting it. And I think that's another part of what we need to do, is to make sure that we keep nurturing the development of faculty in that direction as well.
Great.
I would only add one thing. I mean, as cool as research is, it's about finding things out. Finding things out is great. I mean, that's how you get a Nobel Prize. But it's not the only way to make a positive change in the world. If everybody in the world had a PhD and they wrote books about they finding things out, but nobody did anything, we would not wind up having an improved society. So it's, we frame this, the goals for our students in this sort of blue ribbon, top of the top set of experiences for kids should extend beyond, I mean, not eliminate research, but extend beyond it to people who are creative, who want to create something new. The art side of the university and the design side of the university could be really helpful in that too. Just don't overlook it.
Great. I'm going to go to another question. I think this is one that may have come up in previous years' meetings, and it's certainly appropriate now as we're thinking about this broadening theme. This, I think, is from a current graduate student who I happen to know. She says, "Thank you very much. As a follow-up question, how, if at all, do you envision graduate students, especially those interested in academia, future instructors, being more involved in the future of GCSP?"
I personally see this as low-hanging fruit. I think a lot of what we do with the undergraduate program is natural, and it will bring people into the field that haven't already started there. So that's obviously the place to start. But those who are in graduate programs now are looking for a project, and they're looking for something that matters. And engagement with the Grand Challenge Scholars Program could shape a lot of things in an important new way. And it isn't that hard to do, because you don't have to build programs that extend way outside of engineering to get them interested in the first place. That's just my view.
And I would really love to see them involved in mentoring students, maybe at their own institution, or since we do everything via Zoom these days, there's no reason you couldn't have graduate students who finished the Grand Challenge Scholars Program be good mentors to students at other institutions.
Yeah, well, at one point we worked on a graduate version of the Grand Challenge Scholars Program called the Best Scholars, which was intended to be an exchange between, this was when the RAE in the UK had hosted the International Summit, an exchange between the RAE and US programs, where essentially it would provide a pre-doc program. So the student who's a PhD student midway through their PhD, either on either side of the pond, would then take a year off and go work on a Grand Challenge related topic to kind of enhance and form a network as well, and then come back and bring that and transfect it into their home institution. I think programs like that have great potential. Grad students have the ability to be sort of the pollinating bees for ideas in all of engineering and in all of scholarship, actually.
Yeah, great. I think certainly as students who have been in undergraduates in the program want to continue their experiences and then particularly go on to be faculty, that's really the opportunity to create new sources of energy as they go off into their academic careers. Another question that is in some ways related. It says, moving forward, how do you envision frameworks through which more alumni can support the broadening of the GCSP movement?
Well, one of the challenges we addressed was getting more industries aware of the Grand Challenge Scholars Program. So certainly that could be a great role for alumni, particularly since we have alumni working in a lot of these companies. So helping their company become aware of, not only was that an experience that they had, but that there are, institutions all across the country and all across the world that bring students with similar types of experiences. I think if you could get that on the radar of more companies, then I think they would be really eager to get more Grand Challenge Scholars alums in their midst.
I think this question is a reflection of an unmet need. There's a great thirst from alums of the program to form a more permanent integrated network. And it's something that the three or the four of us never really quite accomplished, but always wanted to. So I would just pass this back on to the audience here and the next leaders of the program that this is an untapped opportunity. There's a tremendous desire and demand from alums to reconnect and stay connected with the program. And so, looking to all of you to figure out mechanisms to allow that to happen.
And I'm actually going to use that, Tom, as a bit of a plug for the breakout sessions that we have scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. We specifically have a session focused on an alumni network or an opportunity to bring alumni together to start planning some of the ways that they can be more directly involved in the program and promoting the program.
Terrific.
All right, I think we have time for maybe one last question. And this is one that really does look towards the future. Not so much about the structure of the program, but really what kind of things should our students, should society be thinking about and working on? So the question is, seeing as how the grand challenges have been tied to the 21st century, what are some tangible results that you would want to see in the year 2100 in order to declare the GCSP a success? Further, seeing as how the 21st century is now 20% behind us, how well is the GCSP currently positioned to achieve these metrics?
I would remove the particular, year milestones kind of thing from the conversation, because there will always be important big challenges out there. So these challenges keep evolving, right? And so we want to make sure that we go back to the original issue, that even though we started with the articulation of grand challenges. So when we go back to 2008, 2007, 2008, I think was, actually the NAE was one of the first organizations that actually articulated big grand challenges. And after that, a number of institutions took it up, like the UN Sustainable Development Goals came after that, and other organizations have been doing this. Why is that? I think it is because we have realized that it is the first time in history where big challenges can be solved because of the increasing power of what we do as a society, from technology to engineering to other things as well, science. But this will keep bringing, questions of how to, new challenges appear all the time. So I think we should be able to decouple or remove a little bit the very specific 14 grand challenges and keep looking at, there are always important, interesting new grand challenges out there. And these are the ones that actually inspire our students. And so how we actually connect this inspiration with solving big, important problems will always be there. And to me, success will be when we get enough students to be interested and inspired to solve big problems, and how this organization is helping them achieve that. I think that is actually the metric of success for me. And when I see, for instance, this is in our school, we graduate about maybe 50 or so Grand Challenge scholars every year. To me, this shows that there is all this interest that keeps coming every time for new students with new mindsets, new interesting ideas, how to solve big problems and how to, look at solving problems that are very impactful to society. So I don't think we'll run out of challenges. I think we will, and so I'm not worried about this at all. And I think success will be how to get engaged in solving this, our students to solve these problems.
Add something that thinking where the world is going today and where we need to be by 2100, and something I'm not seeing nearly enough engagement with today, two issues. One of them is the involvement of the developing world in what we're talking about. When I spend a lot of time talking to folks in Europe, for example, almost every meeting that I go to has a contingent from Africa, from developing universities in Africa there. I don't see that yet in American conversations the way it should be. So that's one issue. The other thing, which you're seeing now evolve in very strong terms, is the need to focus on our societal engagement with diversity, equity, and inclusion. The field of engineering has not been a leader in this area. The Grand Challenge Scholars Program is already a winner in terms of attracting a more diverse population than we've ever seen before. This is a huge problem on the horizon and a resource at our fingertips why are we not doing a better job of building this into the programs? So if by 2100, I'm hoping that we have achieved a much more diverse set of issues in front of us and a diverse population that's dealing with it. And we've found a way to reach out and include the developing world in ways that are not yet on the horizon.
Right.
This is such a great question. It's such a hard one. The broad categories, the healthful, secure, joyful, those are evergreen, but they're not as compelling by themselves as the concrete examples. And some of the concrete examples are not evergreen. So that's the dilemma. I think you kind of need both. And we always viewed those 14 as a basis set. It's not the exclusive set. They're like a basis set that span the entire space. And you could pick another 14 and they would also span the entire space. And I think that there's room for those examples to evolve and still to keep the evergreen aspects of, some of the specific examples are evergreen, like engineer better medicines will always be there. Right? Engineering tools of scientific discovery will always be there. So some of those endure, but some of the others, I mean, for me, the one that jumps out is, saving the planet. I mean, from climate change. I think it's too narrowly described as carbon sequestration in the grand challenges, because at that time that was the concept that was going to save the planet. But I think one has to think a little bit more broadly. But that one is, unfortunately, here for decades and is as compelling as ever.
And I'll tie up, since the question came from one of my students at Campbell in our Grand Challenge Scholarship Program. Great question, Joshua. I would think that we would be successful. I mean, I'd echo the things that have already been said, but if the Grand Challenge Scholars Program is something that people across the country know about, that we've got programs everywhere, that industry is aware of it, and they're looking for these students, and that we've got a great, robust network that's active and helps on all those regards. So.
Great. Well, I'm looking at the clock a little bit here and realizing that we're sadly coming to the end of our time. I don't think we've quite gotten to all of the questions that we would like to, but we certainly got to a lot of them. And I wanted to thank you, the four of you, and Lynn as well, for contributing your thoughts to this discussion at a really important time for the GCSP. It's been incredibly exciting to hear about the foundations upon which the GCSP was created, what inspired you at the time to take action. And that's another good theme for this meeting is, as Yanis well knows, call for action. Because it is a time for action in so many different ways for GCSP and for our country and for the world. And I think hearing about your desire with no one necessarily forcing you to do it, to take action, is truly inspiring. So thank you all very much for making time today to share your stories. I think they'll be incredibly valuable for all of us as we move forward. And I'm sure we will continue to come back to you for more advice and more inspiration as we continue to move forward with the GCSP. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thanks for having us.
And we'll be back in about 15 minutes with the next session. So everyone has a little bit of a break right now.